Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm here in Montauk, and I'm at my friend's beautiful beach house having a lazy Sunday, and thought I should just jump on share a few thoughts on aging. I think it's such a fascinating topic because one, I'm experiencing quite a bit of that myself. And two, I also see a lot of fear in people when I bring up the subject. And so, just like I do with everything else, I just want to make it a conversation because I think it's worth having it, especially when there's a lot of fear around aging, ageism, and what that experience can be like, and what people are afraid of, and so yeah, that's what's been on my mind. So for me personally, and I'm going to be 39 years old this year, I have always found that aging is a really beautiful experience, and I tell you why. Because when I was younger, I was always being told who to be, how to think, how to feel, and especially as a woman in this world who wants to defy convention, who doesn't want to fit in, and never wanted to play the role that I was given, not in society, not in a relationship, not as a daughter, not in companies that I joined. I just thought that the role I was given as a woman in this world was too small and too limiting, and forging your own path and going at it from your own perspective is particularly challenging when you are a woman. And the older you get, the easier that gets. So for me, aging has always been a winning game because I figured out quite early in life that, and actually, it wasn't me, let me be honest. It was other strong women that came before me whose guidance I sought out, who always told me that the older I will be, the more I will get value and recognition for defying convention, society's dictates, and the status quo, and that sometimes instead of getting mad at the things and limitations that represented themselves to me, that I might just have to be a little patient or diplomatic or simply evade other people's fears and restrictive and limited thinking so that I can preserve my own sense of freedom and the goals that I had for myself. And so thank you very much to all of you beautiful, strong women who came before me, because without you, that would have never happened, and I would have probably at some point surrendered to the dictates given to me, because sometimes that was really hard. And I have to say, so far, everything I was told by these women has turned out to be true, that a little bit of diplomatic patience allowed me to stay consistent and to keep my head in the game and to persevere and be patient and persistent where, maybe the status quo told me that it wasn't possible or that it wasn't something I should be doing, could be doing, and that I would just be better off if I, tried to fit in. And, yeah, the older I get, turns out, the more I feel like I'm winning. Because one of my mentors once said, well, you just have to wait until you get really close to your 40s and then people will stop questioning you and your agenda. And now that I'm so dangerously close to the 40s, I have to say this turns out to be very, very true. And she told me this more than 15 years ago. And I definitely don't get challenged on my opinions as much anymore. And I find that rather refreshing. I get to say things with a sense of conviction and authority that is being taken more seriously now than it was 15 years ago. And to be honest, most of these things I was saying then and I'm still saying them now. It's just people's responses to me are very different. Because apparently now, with age, I have the right to define who I am as a woman in this world and as a person, and my values and what I stand for. And I think that's actually worth sharing, because even if there's just one young girl out there listening to me right now, I think it's so important that I pass on this message, that sometimes it just takes what I call the 3 Ps: a little bit of patience, a little bit of perseverance, and a little bit of patience, persistence, and perseverance to get to where you want to go. Of course, surround yourself by people that get you. And I have been very lucky in the way that I have never been pressured by my family, by my parents or siblings, in any way to be anything except myself. And I was even rewarded for the fact that I did not get married before 30, unlike my siblings. Because I think it was always instilled in me that I have the right to be whoever I choose to be, and that I had the right to live the life that as I saw fit, and that could be with a husband, without a husband, with children, without children. That could be prioritizing my career, that could be prioritizing my values, that could be prioritizing adventures. And to be honest, I've done all of that. I have prioritized relationships, even though they didn't last. I have prioritized my career. I've prioritized money at times, and I have definitely given it all away, all of my worldly possessions, as well as quitting my career in media, in tech, with all the money and stuff that came with it, to prioritize adventure and personal growth. And I was not discouraged by anybody in my family to do so. Now, did they give approval? No. Did they find it confusing? Yeah. I mean, not all of my choices were easy to understand. But I think what they wanted for me was that I had grit. They wanted me to be resourceful. They wanted me to be fulfilled. They wanted me to feel engaged. And if I felt bored, which I definitely did in my career, it was like Groundhog Day, Like there was not enough money in this world. You could have paid me to do that another day. Now, that didn't mean that I didn't love my career. When I started it, I loved it. I loved it with all my heart. That's why, I sank my teeth into it and I ran with it. And I loved the money I made. I loved everything that came with it. I just woke up one day and it felt like Groundhog Day. I was literally watching the ceiling fan it happened to be above my bed in my apartment in Chelsea in New York City. And I watched that go round and round and round in circles, thinking, wow, is that all there is? Like, that can't be it. It just, and I think to me, it's not necessarily a question of, money didn't buy me happiness, or fulfillment, because it buys you a lot of things, and I like the things money buys. But what it didn't buy me, what I had at that point, was a continuous learning journey, and I think I had tapped out. I hit a ceiling of learning and excitement and expansion of what was interesting to me at the time. And it was time for me to grow on a new level. And it wasn't intellectually. It wasn't growing my ambition. I was pretty good at that. I was really good at building businesses and going after the impossible. And so once you start checking all those boxes, especially for those of you who are highly talented and ambitious, there's a plateau. And what I wanted was a different journey inward. I wanted a more emotional expansion. And I wanted a more enriching sort of life. And so I prioritized adventure. I wanted to see more of the world. And as somebody who was already raised in a construct where I traveled around the world most of my childhood, that was a natural, there was like another phase, right? Like that wasn't interesting for me when I went off to college. After I did that round, I wanted a career, I wanted a job, I wanted stability. And that was another phase, and then that phased out, and so I wanted more and wanted to see more of the world, and I wanted to work more globally, and I wanted to work in different countries and cultures, and I wanted to experience a more internal expansion of my body, mind, and soul, and I wanted to finally get healthy because I had a lot of health issues that I always struggled with, and so it was just a value shift. It was a shift of priorities, and I don't think that my family necessarily understood that, but they never really got in the way of anything I did. I think that's a side effect of, when they're a tad bit absent and not that interested in a lot of things that I did, and you're left to your own devices, you also have a lot of freedom. That's one thing I always feel very grateful about, that the flip side of all of the complicated constructs of my family, it gave me all the freedom in the world to be exactly who I wanted to be. I was responsible for my successes. I'm responsible for all of my failures. I have absolutely nobody else to blame, and I never really did because they weren't really that engaged in my life, right? It was just like me and you go do you, and, if that works out for you, great. If that doesn't work out, also, tough shit, that's just how it is. And that taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of self-responsibility. I do get to take credit for everything that I built. I also had to take responsibility for everything that everything that failed, that I may have destroyed, that I may have, resulted in failure, or, maybe it was just a mistake and a misstep that led me onto a different path, because rejection is often protection. And most of the things that didn't work out for me led to something way better later down the road. So I often, when I think back, think, wow, how grateful am I that never worked out. One of the things I'm more than grateful for was that I temporarily pursued the yogic path of becoming a meditation teacher and a yoga teacher and on my spiritual quest. And I definitely was super far out there with the fairies because I loved the way it made me feel. I loved feeling the spiritual high. I like to feel plugged in, and I like to feel ecstasy, not through taking substances, but I loved the ecstasy of bliss that some of these spiritual practices can give you. I loved feeling that ecstatic joy and energy and rush. And I loved feeling like I was taking off and communicating with beings on the fourth dimension or fifth dimension, or I had a lot of really interesting experiences that I cannot deny, nor would I deny them. It was an incredibly interesting journey and continues to be so. It's just, I think my priorities have shifted yet again onto another room. I don't even think there's levels. They're not levels that I just get. You go higher and higher. You just shift into different rooms. Now I'm here, then I was there. Each one of those phases came with its own set of development and ecstasy and successes and failures and pain and disappointments and joy. And I appreciated all of them. Even the pain, and the loss and the hardships that came with it. And to me, I'm not actually sure where I started this conversation right now, but I know that to me, I wouldn't trade any of that at all. I learned a lot of things the hard way because I'm stubborn and hard-headed, and I have a tendency to really commit to my next adventure journey and learning journey, which sometimes creates a lot of, and has in the past created a lot of unnecessary stresses, pressures, and chaos. Because I wouldn't, it wasn't until I got older, like way into my 30s, that I learned how to take smaller incremental steps and not just come out with something new and just jump into it and just do it, because why waste time? If this feels good, then I'm going to explore that. So through these journeys, I learned that incremental steps can be really helpful. So back to my failed yoga journey, I just had it in my head that I needed to become a yoga teacher and make that a big part of my path and my teachings and become a successful yoga teacher. And when I look back now, I'm just so grateful that never happened. I'm literally a yoga school reject. I'm an independent thinker, and especially back then on the traditional path in 2010, 11, 12, 13, there was much less now, much more so back then. There was an emphasis on surrendering your ego and your rationale to a teacher. And I would say sometimes there's a lot of dangerous rhetoric out there that prevents people from independent thinking and puts women in particular at risk. And somebody like me, who was raised an independent thinker, who was always interested in contextualizing on for me information in a way that it makes sense to me, but also questions authority, because questioning authority is important. You cannot just go along with teachings or human beings that are teachers, because we're all flawed on some level. And maybe that's also a German thing, that questioning authority is always a good idea. Or at least that's the way I was raised. And so for the yoga school that I had chosen to follow, that was a big no-no. So I was basically not invited to do my second round of the teacher training. I was giving some very vague excuses as to why I wasn't a fit, which are total lies. Not the smartest way to reject me, but man, am I grateful that I was not going to enter into the next phase, which was an intensive 6 months program to continue on into that journey, because it pushed me right back into the world of business, and where I now, and to this day, fulfill a very valuable function, and that is executive coaching, leadership development, driving change, being very impact focused, and really focusing on mindset, behavioral changes, and with that, outcomes that are favorable for the businesses that we build, the way that we lead, and essentially sit at the forefront of thinking when it comes to economics and economic drivers that bring change in the world. And I think I am much better suited in that position than sitting somewhere in a gym teaching people how to stretch. So that is what I think. And looping this back to the fear of aging, I'm just going to leave you with this, that to me, at every day that I grow older, I grow wiser, and I grow more aware of the fact that I do not know anything at all, and I try to humbly embrace my imperfections and my flaws and my love for life and my love for human beings that are equally flawed. And I'm not afraid of it. I think that every wrinkle, every line, every scar, which I have quite a lot of them, because women that live a life of adventure, do extreme sports and ride motorcycles, jump off rocks over buying jewelry, we have scars, and every scar and scratch and wrinkle tells a story of true joy, missteps, mistakes, good judgment, and a life fully lived. And above all, I wish you that. A journey, a slow journey of learning, abundance, and all I ever hoped for was to have a loving heart, an open mind, and a joyful journey through life that I get to share with other human beings. And hopefully some of these words of wisdom resonated with you guys. And as always, if you have questions, please, please, please feel free to reach out. And until then.